It's a 30-minute express escape. Get a dose of destination knowledge, inspiration, and storytelling, showcasing phenomenal travel opportunities. I'm your host and number one travel expert. I'm destinationwhatever.com. Hey everybody, it's me, yours truly. I'm Dave, and I got another Dave here tonight, two Daves for a travel presentation. And not only is that pretty remarkable, we're doing a really remarkable destination. It's a remarkable product. It is a landscape that is just to die for. It is ocean, it is mountains, it is culture, it is anthropology, it is the immersive experience of being on a cargo ship. And with people that follow this page all across the country from coast to coast, I know we're seeing the nights get shorter. We're feeling that crispness in the air. I know certainly around where I live, the leaves are starting to change. So I'm thinking about warmer spots, and this is a great way to escape to something warmer. So with that, let me give a warm welcome to our host tonight, Dave from Aranui Cruises, who's going to tell us all about this amazing adventure. Dave.
Great. Thanks very much, Dave, and good evening or good afternoon, everybody, or wherever you are. My name is Dave Mackay from Aranui Cruises, and what we're going to do this evening is just give you a little overview of this very unique experience in the islands of Tahiti. Now, first of all, just a couple of little things about Aranui. It's our 40th anniversary this year. So we've been sailing to the Marquesas since 1959, and we first started carrying passengers up to this area in 1984. And in conjunction with our 40th anniversary last month in July, we were given a special designation by the United Nations as a World Heritage Site. So the Marquesas Islands Group is now a UNESCO World Heritage Area, which is a very distinction for the islands themselves. It really means that this deep cultural immersion that David talked about is something that is very meaningful and is going to be preserved for many years into the future. So the culture up here is very different from the rest of the islands of Tahiti. So if you're in Papeete or Bora Bora or the Society Islands, you would say Iorana as a welcome. Here in the Marquesas, they speak a completely different language. So you'll be welcome in the language of Kaho'a, for example. And the people consider themselves Marquesian, not Tahitian. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in the presentation as we move forward today. But what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit, first of all, about the getting there and how do you get to the islands of Tahiti? Well, coming from North America, you have several different gateways. You have Los Angeles with Air Nui and Air France. Out of San Francisco, you've got United Airlines. And also, of course, out of Seattle, we have a service twice a week with Air Tahiti Nui as well. So we don't per se have a Canadian gateway as yet, but there is easy access through obviously various departure points to Canada into those US gateways that we actually have. The Tahitian islands are made up of five different archipelagos. Of course, the main archipelago being the Society Islands. This is where the majority of our tourists will come. This is where, of course, Morea, Bora Bora is, the Tuamotu archipelago, the low-lying atolls. And then, of course, we have the Austral Islands in the south. This is something to take note of, actually, in the future, because we are currently about to lay a new keel for a second ship for Aranui, and we'll actually be sailing down into the Austral Islands probably by 2027. Again, like the Marquesas, a very unique area of Tahiti. And then finally, the Gambia Islands makes up the whole Tahitian archipelago. So you'll be flying into the main island of Tahiti. So I want to talk a little bit about the main island first of all, because this is where you're going to spend a bit of time because you have your pre and post accommodation. First of all, of course, Aranui, its home port is Papeete in Tahiti. So we are there year round in the islands. And you're flying into Fa'a'a International Airport. And the airport welcome is fairly straightforward. It's a very small airport, so there's no problems, clearing customs or anything like that here in Tahiti. Just a couple of interesting points, though, is that what we are sailing up to some of the most isolated islands in the world. So while we are more of an all-inclusive cruise, you're probably going to need a little bit of cash um, to to spend while you're on the cruise, particularly at some of the local craft markets in the Marquesas Islands group as well. So there's actually a really good little bank machine here at the airport where you can actually change money if you wish. If you haven't got time to do that, of course you can do it on board as well. You'll also, getting local currency. This is just gives you an idea of, the exchange rates from US dollars. Unfortunately, I know we're talking for Canadians a little bit more, but the local currency is the Pacific franc. And again, as I say, changing money at the airport is probably the way to go if you're doing the Aranui cruise. And then, of course, weather and climate. All people always talk about that here in the islands of Tahiti. It is a tropical destination. We consider ourselves a year-round destination. However, the Marquesas Islands is a little bit different. We are 1,000 miles from Papeete. It's a 3.5 hour flight just to get to the Marquesas. So, located in the southern hemisphere, our winters and summer, you know, pretty much the opposite of what we have here in our part of the world. So let's just talk a little bit about one of our preferred resorts first of all, La Tahiti. Like the Marquesas, La Tahiti is quite unique as well because it actually sits on a black sand beach. When you think of the islands of Tahiti, you think of these beautiful white sand beaches, but we have this really beautiful volcanic beach here. And this is a four-star resort. Accommodation wise, this is our new signature suites that we feature here, and also our ocean view rooms here. Now, these are the bungalows that you will actually be going into in most cases. So all of the bungalows here, all the rooms here at La Tahiti are ocean front facing. So you'll always be looking out into the lagoon across to the island of Morea as well. Just the one restaurant and bar here, a lovely restaurant. And if you're here on a Sunday, this is really quite entertaining. We allow our local community to come in for a Sunday brunch, and so it's a great way for all of our guests to really interact with the local communities while they're staying in La Tahiti. And La Tahiti, or the island of Tahiti itself, is a beautiful island. Most people only spend, one night before heading out here. But if you've got the time, I suggest you spend a couple of extra nights in Tahiti. They have some unique features. We have food trucks in Tahiti before food trucks were popular in North America. This is called the Relats down by the cruise pier actually. And this is frequented by a lot of the local communities as well. So if you're staying overnight in Papeete, it's a great way just to get out of the hotel and get into a local experience straight away by coming down to Relats, interact with the local communities as well, and it's really great value for money. Has all the local Tahitian cuisine, of course, and pizza, etc. But it's just a really great evening out. And there's local bands playing down here as well. Also, the local market in Papeete as well. This is where, again, something you can visit and see all the local arts and crafts here in Papeete. It's also a very bustling little community area where a lot of the local Tahitians shop as well. And of course, you can also shop for the black pearls here in Papeete as well. One of the things that I was there back in February actually and had the opportunities to spend a little bit more time in Tahiti. And I had the opportunity to visit the new Museum of Tahiti. And this is an amazing museum. And it really is an interactive museum which really tells the history, not just of the islands of Tahiti, but the islands of Polynesia. So if you've got the time pre-cruise, I think it's really worthwhile coming down to and visiting the Museum of Tahiti first before you head out on Aranui cruises to give you some idea of some of the experiences that you'll actually have while you are in the Marquesas Islands themselves. So let's talk about the cruise itself. Where do we go and how do we get there? Obviously, we are a very unique cruise ship. And we're starting off in the Society Archipelago in Tahiti. As I mentioned, it's 1,000 miles from Papeete, a 3.5 hour flight. So we are flying, we are sailing, sorry, up through Whakarava, and we just have a day in Whakarava. And then we have about a day and a half's ocean cruising before we actually get to the Marquesas themselves. And we are visiting the six inhabited islands of the Marquesas: Nukuhiva, Uapo, Te Awata, Okahiva, Hivaoa, and Fatuhiva. And these are, as I said, the six inhabited islands of the Marquesas, the majority of which do not have airports. Only Nukuhiva and Hivaoa, and I believe Uahoka has an airstrip as well. So it's a very isolated community. Be before the explorers came to the islands of Tahiti, before they came to the Marquesas, there used to be 150,000 Marquesans living in the islands themselves. Today, there are under 10,000 Marquesans living in this area. So it's a very unique, a very ancient culture that we have here in the Marquesas. And these are just some shots here to give you some idea of what the Marquesan Islands look like. It's not like going into the Society Islands. So if you're expecting the lagoons of Bora Bora or anything like that, and the white sand beaches, you won't see that here in the Marquesas. These are the youngest islands in the island in the Tahitian island group. So there's beautiful vistas here. Um, some of our anchorages that you come into, all of the villages are actually built in the valleys, for example. The way I describe the Marquesas sometimes, it's a bit like the Grand Canyon, but with vegetation. You have shots like this. This is a shot of Fatuhiva here. This is part of the 10-mile hike that we actually do. And you can see the beautiful foliage that comes all the way down, crashing into the ocean here as well. So one of the unique experiences is the topography of this particular area. Again, you visit the waterfalls, some fantastic hiking here as well. And on Aranui cruises, you'll get to experience a variety of different hikes that you can do. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the presentation here today. As I said, it's a very ancient culture, and you have a really immersive experience here. The word tattoo, for example, originated here in the Marquesas Islands. This is where tapa cloth originated as well, where they take the bark and they actually pound it, and it actually comes out like a paper type substance where they actually paint onto it and things like that as well. And carvings, the telling of legends, because as you may or may not know, all of the Polynesian languages were never a written language. They were always a spoken language. So all the history of the people of the islands of Tahiti, of the Marquesan Islands, was passed down through the telling of legends, through tattooing, through carving, and other arts as well. So it's a really distinct culture, as I mentioned to you earlier. Our primary mission when we first started in 1959 was to service the people of the Marquesas with goods and services. So we are a combination of a cargo ship and a passenger ship. Our mission has not changed today. Our mission still is today is to provide goods and service to the people of the Marquesas. And this is all part of the experience that you will have when we come into some of the ports here in like, for example, in Nukuhiva. All the locals are waiting on the dock and they've got all their little tickets looking for the stuff they've actually ordered from the main part of the islands of Tahiti. And a lot of all the goods for the island actually come by ship on the Aranui to the people of the Marquesas. And a lot of our guests, when we arrive, will actually go up on the top deck and actually see all the activity below them. Um, because what we actually do is we carry two different crews on board, our seamen and our hotel crew. This is what we looked like in 1959 when we first started cruising. This is the Aranui I. And we evolved through time. As I mentioned, we started taking passengers in 1984. And earlier this year, I was in the office in San Mateo in San Francisco, and I was just rummaging through some old documents, looking for some interesting things about the Aranui cruise in the past. And one thing I came across was the very first flyer of the very first Aranui cruise. It was unreal. So on that cruise, we had about 20 cabins. We had cabins with twin beds and private facilities, private washrooms. We had cabins with bathrooms down the hall. which was interesting. We had cabins without bathrooms, which I thought was very interesting because I couldn't work out how those people, did whatever. And then finally, my favorite category was deck passage. So people can actually sleep on the deck and travel up to the Marquesas as they well as they if they wanted to as well. And that was all aboard this particular ship here. Then, and of course, back then we had some very unique ways of getting goods and services off the ship and onto the islands themselves. We've got these two long boats here where we used to strap wood and strap them together and then put the little jeep on top and take them into the land as well. But this is Aranui V today. So it's a purpose-built ship that we built in 2015, or it first sailed in 2015. As I mentioned earlier, we carry two crews on board, and that's important because everybody thinks it's a combination cargo ship and a passenger ship, and it is, but we have two distinct crews. We have our seamen who look after the cargo, and then we have our hotel crew who look after all of our hotel product on board the ship, our restaurants, etc., and our cabins as well. Dave and I was talking earlier actually, and I talked about some of the unique um, anchorages that we have because Aranui was really purpose built for the Marquesas Islands. A lot of the large cruise ships cannot get into the islands that we sail to when you're coming on Aranui cruises. So this one here is at Uahuka. And what happens here, you come in this way into the lagoon itself, and then from there, what you actually do is that the captain does a 180-degree turn, and we have two long boats on either side here with a seaman in it. And when the ship does it 180-degree turn, they actually go out to the edge of the rocks here, and they actually tie up to the rocks. And this is like a little excursion unto itself because all the passengers come up on the top deck here and they actually view this. Now, one thing about our cruise is that we have an open bridge policy as well. So at any time during the day or night, you can actually come on up onto the bridge if you want. You just have to ask permission before you walk onto the bridge, of course, and get to speak to all of our crew as well. But welcome aboard. So this is life on board for you as a passenger. When you walk on board, you feel like you're actually on a cruise ship. We have an primarily the majority of our crew are all Polynesian from the Marquesas and all the five archipelagos of the islands of Tahiti. We have our seamen, of course, here. We have our housekeeping teams. We have a lot of the other staff on board. We actually allow our staff, when they're off duty, to come upstairs as well and interact with our guests on board the ship if they want to in the lounge or the bar area as well. Lots of entertainment on board. This is where we also differ from a regular cruise ship. On a regular cruise ship, you'd have your orchestra. Here on Aranui cruises, we have the Aranui band. That's actually made up of the seamen and our hotel crew. So you'll see them at night with their ukuleles playing and the local drums, and they've got the spoons out as well, playing the spoons and all sorts of things. So very, very, very distinct and very unique. Also, the seamen, when you're first welcomed on board the ship, you're doing what's called the haka or the karanga, which is the call onto the ship as well. And right throughout the entire cruise, there's a lot of sort of activities that you can actually enjoy. Learn to basket weave, Polynesian dancing. We carry guest lecturers on board as well, who have a lot of knowledge about the islands of Tahiti and the Marquesas in particular. And sometimes these are really informative programs that you can experience while you're on board the ship as well. In addition to that, we break up our guests into the languages that they speak. So we have typically three main languages, which is English, French, and German. And we have an English speaking guide for our English speaking people, obviously. And we meet every single night, talking about the day that has been and the activities that we're going to be doing the next day and things like that. So, again, it's just a way of really sort of, again, interacting with our local crew as well. Life on board, as I mentioned, we have the two bars. We have our main bar area. We also have our sky bar here as well, the main lounge area where we do a lot of our lectures for our guests. And when you look at the aft part of the ship, you can see we've got our own swimming pool here. We have a snack bar here as well. So it very much is a cruise ship on the back half of Aranui Cruises itself. The cabins. So everybody always asks me about the cabins that we actually have on board. We find that most of our North American guests will actually book into balcony cabins, but our lead-in category are these staterooms here, about 120 square feet. Um, and then we move up into our deluxe staterooms with the balconies as well. The premium suites, a little larger, a little sitting area as well, again with balconies. And then our royal suites, which again are a little bit bigger again, and again, of course, feature outdoor balconies as well in finding the presidential suite. So when you look at us from a cruise perspective, we're not that much different from a regular cruise line when you look at the type of accommodation that we carry on board the ship. Where we differ a little from a regular cruise line is that we don't have multiple restaurants. We just have the one restaurant on board, and we call it family style dining. And so basically here we do set menus every night. We mainly feature lunch and dinner here. Most of the time you're out doing excursions, and lunch is actually included with those excursions. If we're not doing that, lunch will also be back on board the ship here. For those of you who have some dietary challenges, some gluten challenges, for example, vegetarian and other special dietary requirements, our crew, our hotel crew, will sit down with you on arrival on board the ship and talk to you about your dietary requirements, and we can meet your needs to suit the dietary challenges that you actually have. The Marquesas Islands, as I mentioned, we're visiting the six inhabited islands: Nukahiva, Hiva Oa, Uahuka, Uapo, Tawata and Fatuhiva. And as I mentioned, these are some of the most picturesque islands in the islands of Tahiti. It's a land of absolutely breathtaking beauty. But remember, it's an experience about the ancient culture, about hiking, and sort of this immersive cultural experience that you're going to have. As I mentioned, it's a very distinct culture here. Macation speak a completely different language, as I mentioned, to the people of the rest of the islands of Tahiti. You'll see the dancing is reflective of that as well. This is what these people here doing what's called the bird dance, and you'll actually see this while you're part of the on part of the cruise as well in Uapo. Okay, and there's all these types of interactions that you'll actually be having. One of the unique experiences is actually visiting the ancient Tahitian villages, the ancient marae. And all the Marquesian villages were always built around the banyan tree. The banyan tree was said to hold the mana, or the life force of the people. And so all the villages were built around a banyan tree. And these people here are doing what's called the karanga. And so when you come here by on the excursion, they do the karang, which is the call onto the ancient archaeological site, or the call onto the ancient village. And once you get there, our guides will talk to you about, the life as it was back in the day in the Tahitian archipelago, and Marquesas in particular. Beautiful tikis that you will actually see, a very important symbol, not just in the islands of Tahiti and Marquesas, but also in all of Polynesia as well. As I mentioned, doing a lot of hiking. There's a number of museums that you will actually visit as well during your stay here in the Marquesas Islands. And you'll also be visiting some of the churches here, which is really, really interesting. As I mentioned, when the missionaries first came here, the population was just decimated by disease, and it was really um, through the churches which gave some local Marquesian sanctuary in their churches is how the culture actually survived. But you go into these beautiful old Catholic churches, and the carvings in here are absolutely magnificent. Some of the islands that you'll go to are really known for their bone carvings and things like this, and you'll also get to visit some craft markets as well in the Marquesas Islands themselves as well. And there is also a lot of different other activities that you can do. We do have a number of optional activities that you can do as part of our program. Um, There is some diving that you can do, not so much in the Marquesas, but also but in the Tuamotu archipelago and Rangiroa when you come back through the island of Bora Bora. We have a fishing excursion that you can do. There's a private tours of Fatuhiva. And of course, we do our famous 10-mile hike in Fatuhiva. And um, there is a 4x4 excursion for those guests who don't feel they can be that active to do that hike, available as well. So, just to conclude today, just to tell you a little bit more about what's included and how long the cruise is. It's a 12-day, 11-night small cruise ship program that we have. We embark and disembark in Papeete. However, when you were returning from the Marquesas, you are returning back again through the Tuamotu archipelago, through the island of Rangiroa. And then from Rangiroa, you head over to Bora Bora. And we spend a day in Bora Bora. So if you wish, you can actually get off the ship in Bora Bora and do 2 or 3 nights in Overwater Bungalow, for example, if you wanted to, and then head back to Papeete after that if you wanted to. All meals are included on board the ship. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner is always included. We do some local Tahitian cooking as well, with the umus, and which is the where we cook all the food in the ground, like a hangi in New Zealand. And then we do excursions every day, and optional tours, as I mentioned, are available. And I should mention our excursions as well, because when we first developed tourism in the Marquesas Islands, when we started in 1984, part of our experience or what we wanted to do was to give back to our local communities. So what we've done is that we have all the local communities operating all of our excursions. So it's the local communities who run our excursions on our behalf. So when you come off the ship, for example, if you're going up to, say, the archaeological sites, we have all these little 4x4s all lined up on the dock with all these drivers to take you up to the excursions in different places. And these are all these little micro businesses that they have, all the restaurants that we have and that we actually visit in the Marquesas Islands would not be there if it wasn't for the Aranui cruise. So it's a really way that we continue to give back to the people of the Marquesas. If there's any goods and services that medical equipment or anything like this, or school supplies for kids, these are all carried up by Aranui on a complimentary basis, to the people of the Marquesas as well. As I mentioned, we have a lot of guest lecturers on board, and guests can also disembark in Bora Bora as well. So I hope that just gives you an idea of our very, very unique experience that we have in the islands of Tahiti. As I like to say, and from my experience being on our cruise, our guests that we have on board tend to be more travelers. They're not cruisers, and they're really looking for that immersive Tahitian, Polynesian cultural experiences, and that's what we can offer them here with Aranui Cruises. So again, I thank you very much for your time today, and look
Of
forward to
course.
working with David and welcoming you on board Aranui Cruises.
Awesome, wonderful. That's a great presentation because if you were into going on a cruise, let's say, I think this shows that it's not cruising in the traditional sense. This is something totally different. It's one of a kind, and it's just a beautiful destination as well. I did have a couple questions that popped in, so I'd like to ask those. A question about beverages on board, alcoholic beverages, non-alcoholic beverages. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
That's a great question, actually, David. So, okay, so we have the two bars on board. We don't include alcoholic beverages with the cruise. However, we do include wine with lunch and dinner. Okay, so um, that's sort of our French thing coming in, if you will.
Oui,
Um,
oui.
yeah, so we do serve wine with lunches and dinner, and of course, if you're a non-drinker, you know, pop and fruit juice as well, are complimentary with lunch and dinner as well on board the ship.
Okay. Cool. Another question was about communication, specifically Wi-Fi coverages, the modern world. I know we're going to the ends of the world here, but what's the situation like for communications?
It's improved dramatically because we now have Starlink available
Oh, cool.
as well. So that's a good question as well. So it is only at certain times of the day that we have it, but it is available on board. What a lot of guests will. What's really interesting actually is that the Tahitian government actually ran a fiber optic line up to some of the islands in the Marquesas, like places like Nukahiva. So you can actually, when you come off board off the ship, you can go into local cafes, for example, and you can also get Wi-Fi through those cafes as well. But when I was last on the ship before we got Skylink, the you could still get Wi-Fi, but it's a much better service that we actually have now. So yes, you can be connected while you're on board the cruise.
Perfect, because we want people to have their moments to post their selfies and get their friends to come again. And just talking about Starlink makes me think too, I bet you the stargazing out there is phenomenal.
You know what, David? If you on the day you're going from Whakarava to the Marquesas that day in ocean cruising, go if you go up on the very top deck at night in the middle of the South Pacific, it's unbelievable.
Oh, I mean, it's just for me, this is a dream. All right, perfect, folks. Well, if you're feeling the dream, and I think again, this presentation that Dave has delivered for us certainly could make you feel the dream. I know I can almost like smell vanilla and Manoi flowers because you took us to Tahiti and beyond. Sometimes we say Tahiti, and then I correct myself. I say, oh, that's French Polynesia, but then really the Marquesas, it's just totally different. And you took us to all these places today. So. Thank you so much for showing up. And for people that are checking out the presentation tonight, if you have any questions about it, or if you want to discuss it more, if you want to book it, please reach out on my website, destinationwhatever.com. This is a wonderful trip that could be done on its own. But Dave also talked about flying in early, and I think that's really important for Canadian travelers because you don't want to have any weather delays. And I think the island of Tahiti could be a great spot to go and spend a few days before embarking. Speaking about Canadian travelers, I think you had some promotions on as well, Dave, that we could talk about.
For sure. So, first of all, number one, we have just launched a Canadian resident discount. So, for Canadian residents, you will get a 10% discount on our cruise program. In addition to that, we have for 2025, so for cruises, one through voyage eight or nine, I think, or one through voyage five, then five through 8 or 9, we have additional discounts. So for the first 5 voyages of the year, it's a 20% discount, and for the last 2 or 3, it's a 15% discount. Now those discounts are combinable with the Canadian resident discount. So you can get up to a 30% discount on the 2025 cruises. You actually have to book at this stage by the 31st of October, 2024. Okay. So if you're thinking about heading out to the Marquesas Islands or to the islands of Tahiti in particular, and the Marquesas, um, those first sailings that we have in the first half of the year are excellent value, and will save you some significant amount of dollars for the
I love
Canadian.
that. Perfect. And so if you are out there in the virtual world, you're hearing this again, just reach out to me at destinationwhatever.com. I'm Dave, he's Dave. The two Daves will make sure you get the best pricing on your departure for this again trip of a lifetime. Another thing I just wanted to let people at home know about is that you talked about flights. There is also a flight that's useful that does California to Tahiti and then on to New Zealand. I think it's with Air Tahiti Nui. So if you're thinking about doing New Zealand and you're looking for a way to do a cool add-on and you have a few extra weeks, I'm talking to you, Canadian snowbirders, this would be an extraordinary way to add the South Pacific. on to New Zealand or Australia or anything. Or as I said, you could simply do this on a trip on its own. It certainly has its own legs, and that's something else for a ship. So, Dave, finally, just thank you once again, everybody else. We have a few other travel talks coming up October 7th. We'll be talking about Greenland with Hurtigruten HX Expeditions. One of their staff, Ian, just went up there in the summer. So very recently, actually, and we'll hear about that. And what's really cool is it's the east coast of Greenland. So not that many people go to Greenland, but this is the lesser visited coastline of the world's largest island, Greenland. And then on November 4th, we have a presentation with Wendy from Exodus Travels, and she'll be talking to us about Vietnam and Cambodia. But for tonight, thank you once again, Dave. Everybody out there, if you're into Aranui, or if you know a friend who might be into Aranui, send them the link, destinationwhatever.com/Aranui, and let's send you to the Marquesas Islands. Thanks so much, Dave, for coming out tonight. Have a great evening.
Great. Thanks, Dave, and take care, everybody.
Thank you for watching. This has been a Destination Whatever travel production. Subscribe for all my content. Facebook at Destination Whatever, Instagram at destinationwhatever.travel, and YouTube at Destination Whatever. Or head on over to my website, destinationwhatever.com. I'm your #1 travel expert, helping travelers nationwide explore the world. So get in touch and let's make your travel fantasies come true.